Hello, everyone, to a new episode of the Self Publishing Mastery Talks. I'm very excited and happy to have with us today Bryan Cohen. So, for those of you who don't know him, and I doubt that there are many of you who don't know Bryan Cohen, he's a podcaster, he's a speaker, he's a coach, he's a co-host of the popular podcast Sell More Books Show, and he's an author of over 30 books, among which 1,000 creative writing prompts and TED Save the World book series. So welcome, Bryan. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me, AG. Very happy to be here.
Okay, so I will start with a question related to the podcast. So I went to the podcast website, of course, and there is something very interesting that people can get there besides the episode. And that thing is the ultimate cheat sheet for selling more books, which
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you are an expert. That's an area where you are an expert. And I was wondering, because you're an author too, so you write fiction and nonfiction. And what did you say that are the top three book selling tips that work for you in fiction and then in nonfiction?
Sure. Well, I think you have to really think about the order in which you do things because there are tons of tips out there, a lot of which have worked for at least one person. Now, things don't always work as well for the second person who tries something normally, but you need to think what's the order that you're trying to plan out your career in. And something I've been thinking about a lot with it's really fiction or nonfiction is before you get into all the marketing mumbo jumbo and you throw down money on some kind of ad and do something, you need books. And not just book, you need books. You need multiple books. You need to be to the point where you aren't just a guy or a girl out with 2 books, 3 books. You can have 2 or 3 books, but you need to also know I'm going to finish the 3rd book in 3 months. I'm going to finish the 4th book 3 months after that. I'm going to finish the 5th book 3 months after that, or 2 months, or 1 month, or however often you decide to write. So I think my first tip is really get your production down first. Figure out exactly when you are going to be scheduling these in, because if you spend lots of time on marketing, it may take away from the amount of time you have to write. So get the writing figured out first so that you are doing marketing in addition to the writing. So that's tip 1. I would say tip 2 is just don't forget the people who have already bought your books. Don't forget. There are so many tips now on building your email list. There's ads you can use. There's services you can use. There's all sorts of stuff. You can give away freebies on InstaFreebie. So many ways to build your list. But if you have 15 to 20 people on your list, which is not a lot, but it's a start, have you connected with those people? Have you talked to them? Have you found out what they like about your books? And if you don't set up something, whether it be automated emails when someone joins your email list, or just an occasional time frame you set every couple of weeks to go back and reach out to these people. If you don't have that set up to begin with, you have no business building an email list, trying to find new people, because if you don't know how you're going to connect with the people when they get on, then you're just throwing money down the drain, basically. And I would say the 3rd tip. So 2nd tip, engage with your people, no matter how many there are. And then 3rd tip is to go out there and start building your list, but make sure it's prepared to get people organically. That's the term a lot of authors use when they have readers who have come through just buying a book and they join your email list, or they found your website and they join your email list, or they read about you in another author's post or something. Those are organic. Now, trying to do every trick in the book to get your first 1,000 or 10,000 people. It's not going to matter if you don't have some organic people. If every single person on your list is someone who came in through a freebie website or an ad, well, you need a mix. You need to get those organic people. So make sure your books are set up in a way that people who buy your book can go and find you afterwards. So links to your email list in the back, all of that. And one of the best ways to organically get people onto your list is to write more books. So it goes back to tip 1. Have more books out, have more opportunities for people to find you, and then you are going to be in better shape.
Yeah, so write books, but not just write books, write great books.
Of course. And get better as you go. Keep learning, keep growing to write those additional books.
I remember this summer at the Greater Los Angeles Writers Conference, Nora Flight, who is one of the most successful romance authors in Southern California, she said, if you want to make a living as a self-published author, you need to put out at least 3 books per year, or even 4.
I totally agree with that. And I know people who are doing, I was just talking to a guy who he had yet to publish a book in mid 2016. Released 3 books, did a ton of research to know that his books were going to be good and they were going to be well received. Started writing his books, and now he puts out a book every 6 weeks, and he's earning 5 figures a month.
Wow.
And he started a year and a half ago.
Wow.
So it's never too late, but he did the work, and he is now producing, if it's every 6 weeks, that's at least 8 books a year.
Yeah, and this leads us to topics such as productivity, because you actually need to be really good at it to be able to put out this amount of books. So how about you? How do you do it? Because you're a writer. I know that also you're doing your comedy stuff as well, and then you're doing the podcast, and then you're helping authors with building their email list and many other things with their book blurbs, and there is a whole lot of services you offer. So how do you juggle with all these different activities you have?
And let's not forget, I'm also a dad. My daughter just turned a year old, so I know a lot of people out there. And this was when I wasn't a dad. I couldn't really speak to that because there's so many authors who are parents out there. So just throwing that out there that I'm in the boat too. So there are lots of things going on in my life. There's always a sacrifice that has to be made when you're doing. I remember reading this in Shonda Rhimes, the creator of Grey's Anatomy, her book Year of Yes. If you Shonda Rhimes, I think I said Grimes, whatever, but she said when you're doing one thing really well, you are not doing another thing well. And that's something you have to sacrifice. Balance is something that's talked about a lot, but most of the successful authors I know are not balanced. They are sometimes working 6-7 days a week. I am not anymore. I've tried to scale back on my weekend things, but I also pay an assistant 15 to 20 hours a week at this point. I also have people to help with the book description business. And so you can always, even if it's not paid help like I didn't have enough money for paid help several years ago. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get help from others if you're struggling with something. Doing some kind of trade. I know a while back I did a trade with a friend who I wrote her book descriptions, and she edited my books. That doesn't mean it's an offer that everyone can do that with me, so I don't want to get 20 requests saying like, "Oh, I'll edit your book, my book descriptions." But
not anymore. Yeah.
But you can trade. You can do bartering with others to help with the time. And the other thing I think is really just there's going to be times where you're overwhelmed, and it's a matter of finding your best way to decompress from that, whether it be meditation or listening to quiet music or self-talk, aphorisms, all that sort of thing. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but you need to think back during your life, when was there a time you were stressed and that you were successfully able to navigate? And, we can copy off ourselves. We can go back and say, this instance stunk. It really was not good at the time, but we found this way out of it. And you can repeat that and try it again and get better as you go. And that is, there's no one size fits all, but the one size fits all for this is look at what you did right in the past and then copy it in order to get out of your head, to feel better about yourself, to do that sort of thing.
Right. When it comes to productivity, there's no size fits all, and I think it's the same with book marketing. Some activities work for some genres, and for some people, some activities don't. So I know that some people advise authors to start a podcast. To build a list, to build an audience. So what was your goal when you started together with Jim Cockrell, the Sell More Books show?
Well, that's a great question. It was back in 2014. I had been doing some writing. I had been doing the writing prompts for a couple years, was starting to do events with other nonfiction authors for books about writing or books about being an author. And that is around the time I connected with Jim. And I had just seen people like Joanna Penn and the Self-Publishing Podcast guys. They've made such great connections through podcasting. And I'm a former actor, improviser. I definitely like being in front of a microphone, in front of a camera. And so I thought that it was kind of a good unification of skill sets there. I wanted to connect with authors, and I wanted to help them to sell more books. And so that was really where that came from. Now, as far as the advice, should you start a podcast? Should you not start a podcast? Nonfiction, I'd say it's a pretty good idea, especially if you are good in front of a microphone, if you like interviewing people, and you could see it having some kind of benefit for your career. Fiction, it's a little more dubious. I have not yet seen an indie author, a self-published author, have a successful fiction podcast. I have seen some successful fiction podcasts, but the production value was pretty high. Things like Welcome to Night Vale, Lore isn't fiction, but it's kind of urban legends, and these are a couple of podcasts that do well, but I think unless you have a background in sound production, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a fiction author.
And for a nonfiction author, what are the main challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is finding people. A book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, which is pretty good. He talks about how your number one problem is always obscurity. People out there don't know who you are. And that means that when you put out a podcast, it's not just going to magically catch on. You need to go out there. You need to find people. If you're doing an interview podcast, you need to find people to interview. If you are doing some other kind of podcast, like me and Jim had a challenge because a lot of podcasts get a boost from having people on there and then having those people share it. It was just the two of us for the most part. Now, what we had going for us is that our podcast is really, really good. And it serves a unique niche by sharing the news in the publishing industry. And so people like Joanna Penn, Simon Whistler started to share the podcast And that started to get us going. And then we did a little list building and whatnot. But you need to determine, if you're a nonfiction author, kind of what is your funnel. What are you selling? Are you really trying to get people to the podcast so that they get to know you, and then you're going to sell them just a book down the line? Because then that might not be worth it. Are you going to do 20 books? That might be more worth it. Are you going to do a course or some kind of coaching or other paid training? That might be worth it. You have to determine, is that going to be, are the things I put in, the effort I put in, will that be worth the time I'm going to put in to get people, not just for my podcast list, maybe my book list, email lists. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So you need to be prepared to handle all of that. And you need to remember that it's not just going to magically catch on, because your books didn't just magically sell, and neither will your podcast be downloaded in such a way.
What do you think that makes a podcast catchy?
Well, I think you need a good format. The interview's been done a million times, and then someone like John Lee Dumas comes along and does an interview every day for now over 1,000 consecutive days, 2,000, however many, because he does his 7 days a week. That was his big differentiator. You hear people who've been in it for a while, like Joanna Penn, still kind of doing the same sort of show with some tweaks. But if you're new and you just try to do the same show as her, you don't necessarily have the hook. So you need to figure out, well, am I going to get the most amazing guests? Am I going to have this great repartee with my co-hosts? What is it going to be? You need to determine that ahead of time, and that is going to, you may test something and it may not work. But you need to try something slightly different at least.
Well, we know that when it comes to books, the book blurb, book description that people put on their Amazon pages and on other retailer pages, those are crucial. It is very important, and we are going to talk about it. What about podcasts? How important it is, the podcast description or the podcast artwork, or all these little details other than the content?
It's good to get them right. It's good to research what everyone else is doing and kind of try to make sure you're kind of podcasting to market, that you're getting the right kind of podcast for your type of audience. But at first, just get it up there. Don't worry too much about the description. Okay. Write it as best you can, and start producing content, because you're not going to know necessarily until 6 months or 12 months in if it's even successful. So you might as well just go for it and see what happens.
So when did you know with yours?
Sorry, I'm having some coughs here.
Oh.
But we knew when our numbers started to go up a little bit. We started to see it go from 500 downloads an episode to 1,000 to 2,000. Obviously, that was an indicator. But I think the positive reviews, I think a lot of people talking about it, even beyond reviews, sharing it with their friends, and seeing people comment on the show episodes, seeing them comment on our website made us know, all right, we've got something going here, something that people are willing to spend their time and come over to our website. That definitely means that we have diehards. And if you have diehards of anything, that definitely means you can get more.
So it happened before 6 months?
It happened, before?
Before the 6 month mile?
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't say that, but I would say after a year we were starting to find our groove. So 6 months to a year is probably your minimum, and so you should absolutely plan for that.
Yeah, I remember I worked with someone in Dublin for their organization podcast, and after 3 months he decided to cut it off, but it was
Oh,
way too soon to see results, and it was a good one. Anyway,
yeah.
I know that you are. I mean, you and Jonathan, you are. You have supporters on Patreon, but I think
Hmm.
well, they shouldn't expect to get support on Patreon after the first 3 episodes.
Absolutely not. It's gonna take time.
Hmm.
People need to trust you, and 3 episodes, 3 months worth of episodes, definitely isn't enough.
Yeah, and I know that right now you have something. You're giving some away something special for people who are pledging $3. Is it still valid, that offer?
Uh huh. Yeah. Jim has a really great service
Uh-huh.
called Happy Book Reviews,
Mhm.
and we are everyone who signs up for the $3 pledge amount is that's $3 per episode. That's 4 times a month. They are getting the $25 feature for free, and we have other things. We read your show out on the your book out on the show and
Yeah.
post it on our website, and we have some other little benefits here and there. If you're a member, if you're a patron with us for more than a few months, you get some other special bonuses. So we try to encourage people to stick around for the long haul, and so those extra little bonuses are incentives for them continuing to fund the show.
Plus, the content is really amazing. So I'm I'm a fan of your podcast, and I can testify. I
Well,
can
thank you.
say that. So Sell More Books show, go on iTunes, you will find it there, Stitcher too, and then if you just Google it, then you're going to get to their amazing website, and there you've got more information and more perks and more free PDFs that
Mm-hmm.
will provide you like with useful information, such as well, it's not on your website, but we can talk about it now because I said
Mm-hmm.
that we are going to talk about it. Book descriptions, because you are kind of a wizard of book descriptions. You've been so many authors with that. So, and still some people can get it right. So people can write a great book, but when it comes to book description, oh, that's a different story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different set of skills.
Mhm.
It is the copywriter mindset of trying to make sure every word has impact, which of course you try to do for an entire book, but it's impossible to go through 60, 80,000 words and spend the time necessary to make sure every single word is doing what you want it to do. You could do that. It would take a long time, but with a 200 to 300 word book description, it's every word has impact. The way you phrase things, the way you take readers through your story, or if nonfiction through the solution to their problem, everything you do in that can have an impact. And if you just throw something together and fling it up there, it could be one of the reasons you're not having results if you're not finding success.
So could you give us some basic rules of a great book description?
Sure. So I think for a fiction book description, it starts with a really strong hook. We have seen so many great examples of amazing hooks. I've been fortunate to be able to write some with my staff, but one of the best ones is the famous Adam Croft hook from his book, from his thriller book. Would you murder your wife to save your daughter? It's scary and it's short and it gets people to keep reading, and that's really what you want the hook to do. Continuing with fiction, I like to make my descriptions about the character. I think most people tend to care more about what a character's doing versus a plot. And if you have a really complex plot, people aren't going to care about that as much in the description unless you already establish a character and there's someone that they can relate to, that they can enjoy. And then I like to make sure there's a call to action at the end. You're not, for those not familiar with copywriting and sales pages, a call to action basically tells your reader what to do. And you're going to tell them to go buy the book when you've finished kind of doing a synopsis of your book in the description. and that's for both fiction and nonfiction. I will say one more thing about nonfiction. When you are hooking people, it's about solving a problem. So I like to have a question, that problem in the form of a question, like, are you drowning in debt? And then the solution, you phrase your book as the solution. Discover a system to get your credit cards down to zero. So you have a problem followed by a solution, and then readers are willing to continue reading the description, or they may just say, oh, that sounds good. And this is particularly true with nonfiction readers because they like to download every book on a certain topic, especially if it's affordable. They'll just click, they'll buy it, and they'll check it out at some point. Hopefully yours rises to the top of the half dozen nonfiction books they just bought on that subject.
Yeah, and hopefully then they will write a good review.
Yes, that is of course the hope, and that really does tie into the description, because you want your description to accurately describe your book.
Right.
And if it doesn't, you describe your romantic thriller, which is really very heavy thriller. You describe it as a romance with a couple of thrills. People will read it and say, I was expecting more romance. 2-star, 1-star. So you have to accurately describe your book for the genre it is, what type of book it is, and what they're going to find inside.
Is there a way in which we authors can persuade or entice or make people who buy our books to actually write a review about our book?
Well, one of the best things I've seen is really just making sure you mention that in the back of the book, so that those who get there, they will click and potentially do it. But I am all about getting readers onto my advanced review team, my street team, whatever you would call it. And then I encourage people who maybe have bought the book, but maybe also those who just said, I don't really have the money for this, but I want to help. And those are the people you get on your street team and ask them to go leave a review. Give them a couple weeks before the book is launched so they can read it, which means you need to have it ready a few weeks before the launch. Yeah. And then you ask them. Asking is very important. You're not going to get things more often than not if you don't ask for them.
We are 2017 is almost over, and you've been the whole year on your podcast. You've been talking about trends and what's going on in the self-publishing industry. So I think I couldn't think of someone else to ask about. What do you think were the major trends in 2017, and what do you see coming up next year in self-publishing?
Sure, of course. Well, I think that one trend was that a lot of people were not happy with Amazon because Amazon's KDP Select program, which allows you to have a book in Kindle Unlimited and gives you a few other promotional tools, well, the payments went down.
Yeah.
And so people were not happy about that. A lot of people who had were making significant amounts of money, 4 or 5 figures, they saw a major drop, and there were certain features that may have been responsible for that. It's still said that the page flip feature, which is something that readers can use on their Kindle devices or their Kindle tablets or even on their Kindle apps on their phone, that lets you scroll through the book easier. It's still not 100% sure that pages that you should get paid for are actually getting counted when that feature is being used, and Amazon is promoting the heck out of that feature. So we're still not sure about that. It's still really difficult to know if that's working, and so I think people are starting to migrate to other retailers like Kobo and Apple, and I think it's important that we look into how to sell more books there. I would say this was definitely a year of paid advertising. I think Facebook ads really came about probably late 2015 to early 2016 with authors. But now we have BookBub ads. Now people are really diving into the Amazon Marketing Services ads, which came in 2016, but people didn't really figure them out fully until 2017. And so people are really trying to use paid advertising. They're really trying to make sure they're spending their money wisely on those platforms, Amazon, BookBub, Facebook, everywhere. And the last thing I'll say is I think we're starting to see, and people are starting to realize, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, people are realizing that just because you have cobbled together a list of 10,000 readers does not mean they are your fans. You need to make sure that the second people get on your list, you're engaging with them. I talked to an author not too long ago. She built a list of over 10,000, I think maybe even closer to 20,000 people, and her sales were starting to drop. And I asked her, well, do you have emails set up automatically to go out to these readers when they come on your list? And she said no. So she built the huge list, but was not ready for it. So I think whether or not this is a trend, I think people are figuring out that a big list on its own is not enough.
Right.
And I hope that they figure out that engagement with their readers is the answer.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of work and complicated. Sounds like in the future, more and more, if authors want to make money out of their books, they need to put money into marketing and into paid ads. Organic reach is not so big anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to drop more and more. And if they want to know more about how to market their books, I think that there is an event coming up next year they need to attend where they will meet you and Jim as well. And it's Selmer Books Show Summit. Yay! So please tell us more about it. So when is it going to happen, where, and what do you have planned for it?
Of course. Well, thank you for bringing up the summit. Of course, we're very excited about it. So the Sell More Book Show Summit is an event that will be taking place for indie authors and hybrid authors, so authors who are doing traditional publishing and self-publishing. It's happening May 4th through 6th, 2018 in Chicago, which is where I live. So I'm working with Jim and a couple of other authors, Jay Thorne, Zach Bohannon. We're bringing together some great speakers like Lindsay Baroker and Chris Fox and Brian Meeks and more coming every day. And we want this event, this is the vision for the event, is to really be something where you come in with, you kind of have this mix of, I know how this part works, maybe I know how email marketing works, I don't know how ads work, or I know how production works, I can write books, but I don't know how to connect with readers. Our goal with this event is you leave with the whole continuum. You leave with the understanding of how to get the production right, how to get the engagement right, how to get the email list building right, how to get the ability to market effectively right, and how to really experiment with what you have coming next. But at the same time, being around, we have 175 seats. Don't know if we'll fill them all, but tickets are starting to really pick up. So you could be with 174 other authors and really network with them and connect with them and learn from them, maybe even cross-promote with them. So if you can do all those things in a line, you get them right, the right order, and you know which are the right actions to take in that order, then I think you're going to have less wasted time and you're going to make more money selling your books.
So who's going to be the MC? You and Jim, or both of you?
We've talked about it, you know. Jim really wants it. I think we'll trade off.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan. And yeah, so 4th of May is my birthday. This would be a nice way to celebrate my birthday, being there.
Nice. That
Yeah,
would be cool.
yeah. So where can people go to sign up for the summit?
Sure. Well, they can go to sellmorebookshow.com/summit.
Mhm.
You can email us at contact@sellmorebookshow.com if you have any questions about it. There's currently, I don't know when this is going up, but there's currently an early bird price through January 12th,
Okay.
2018. So if you are seeing this, watching this, listening to this before then, it's going to be a little cheaper. But either way, we are going to have a payment plan available. So with a lot of these events, you throw down. I mean, we're not this expensive, but you have to throw down 500. You have to throw down 1,500, all in one lump sum. But we wanted to have a payment plan available so that you guys out there could put a little bit down each month to make it a little more affordable. I know that it can be tough out there to decide, oh, I'm going to go to this $400 event. But if you are really interested in getting this stuff in line, getting your ducks in a row, we are going to try to be the best conference ever for that sort of thing.
Wow, good luck. I'm sure that it's going to be an amazing event. And yeah, we'll on Self-Publishing Master, we will keep people updated on your lineup of speakers, and we'll support you in every
Thank
way
you,
we can.
AG. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been a pleasure. We are recording this before Christmas, and we are going to upload this on YouTube before Christmas. So
Okay.
I can only wish you a Merry Christmas and great New Year ahead.
Thank
And
you.
to you,
Same to you, of course.
yeah, thank you, and to all the people who are watching us and listening to us now. And what can I say? People, one more thing. So people can go to your website to connect with you and to see, because you're still helping them with different
Hmm.
services. So where can they go to have a look?
You can find out about everything at bryancohen.com. That's Brian with a Y. That'll have links to the podcast, links to my book description business, Best Page Forward, links to some of the free training I'm doing at Selling for Authors. If you go to bryancohen.com, you will see all of it, and you can decide which path to take.
Yeah, and don't forget to listen to Sell More Books show every week, right?
Every Wednesday morning, if you want to find out what's happening in the publishing world, we're the ones to tell you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bryan Cohen.
Thank you, AG.